A Baltimore Ravens executive took a clear and firm stance on the team's next steps in the Justin Tucker situation. We talk about that and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, as an audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're a 5-day-a-week plus more daily Ravens show. So every Monday through Friday, we have daily Ravens coverage for you. Then we go live after every Ravens game, after every piece of Ravens big news. On the weekends, sometimes we have bonus episodes. So if you want daily Ravens coverage, be sure you keep it locked in here on Locked On Ravens. Happy Monday. For those that are also Baltimore baseball enjoyers, Baltimore Orioles, it's opening day in Baltimore. So that's an exciting thing. You know, the city buzzing with sports again. You know, I miss Ravens football, but, you know, the Orioles will hold it down until the Ravens come back. It was a busy weekend over here on Locked On Ravens, just for the Ravens in general. John Harbaugh signed a 3-year extension. We went live. We instantly reacted to that on Friday evening. We had a bonus episode where we talked about the wild details that came out about the contract. So all that happened. But today we're going to be diving into Sashi Brown, the team president. He spoke with Ravens media down at the owners' meetings, and he had some things to say about the Justin Tucker situation, John Harbaugh. So we're going to, we're going to dive into what he had to say there at the league meetings, particularly around the Tucker situation, but also around a couple of other things as well. And in the final part of the show, we'll dive into our regularly scheduled Monday programming, which is Mock Draft Monday. But let's dive into it. Sashi Brown, again, spoke to reporters down at the league meetings, and obviously Justin Tucker's situation with the Ravens still remains unresolved after, upwards of 15 women have made accusations against Tucker with inappropriate conduct at massage parlors. Tucker is, someone that has been a member of the Ravens for a really long time now. Came in the league in 2012 and has built himself up as this figure in Baltimore. But obviously we don't know the end result of this because the NFL is still conducting their investigation. There have been multiple, accusations, reports, stories that have come out about the situation, but we really haven't heard much about it over the past handful of weeks / the last month. So Sashi Brown, who is the Ravens team president, he spoke about it, was asked questions about it, as he should be and as the Ravens should be, and had a pretty clear and firm stance about what the next steps are for the Ravens, which really, in his words, are just to have the NFL do their thing, and that they're running the investigation, the NFL is, and that the Ravens aren't running their own so as not to complicate things. The Ravens will wait for the results of that investigation, and then they can make a decision based off of that. Sashi Brown said, according to Jess Rebeck here, quote, "The nature of these allegations we take very seriously. These investigations do take time. We want to make sure we have a great understanding and extra understanding of the facts." And, again, reiterated that the team is following the league's lead. So that is the stance Baltimore is taking right now. Just kind of going off of what the NFL is doing, what they're investigating, and what they are finding. So obviously he is making it clear that, yes, the allegations, the Ravens are taking them seriously. And he also added in the length of investigations, never satisfying to anyone involved. But he mentioned it is important to let things play out. But the Ravens are also still under fire. And it came up because Sashi Brown answered a question about it, of their zero tolerance policy that everybody thought existed. John Harbaugh made comments about, but apparently has never existed and will never exist. Sashi Brown was again asked about it, or just, the question in general of, okay, what about a policy here? And he said, according to, again, Jess Rubeck at The Athletic, quote, "The notion is we have a zero tolerance policy where we're going to make decisions just merely based on allegations before we have full understanding of the facts, before we allow investigations to continue. We will never have that policy." So again, the stance there is just letting due process play out, the whole, innocent before guilty type situation. And, we've heard multiple prominent figures speak on this situation where the Ravens, Chris Canty was one of them over on his show. He's former Raven, now does work for ESPN. The whole thing with Justin Tucker and the Ravens is, yes, due process is there, and that's what Chris Canty was kind of reiterating when it came to Justin Tucker. But at the same time, what Canty, and this was on his show on Sportsman, he ended up saying, I'll read a small tidbit of this so we get context to what I'm trying to say here. He said, quote, "NFL teams have gotten rid of players for less. I'm not trying to disparage different positions, but what makes this situation a lot different than what we had with Deshaun Watson is that Justin Tucker is a kicker. He's one of the most decorated kickers in NFL history and likely will be a Hall of Famer, but he's coming off the worst season of his career. And you have an uncomfortable set of facts that you have to contend with. There is a pattern of behavior here, whether he did something wrong or he didn't do something wrong. He's yet to be determined in a court of law, but his proximity to these types of allegations is enough to be deemed bad for business. If you have such a high standard according to your own head coach, John Harbaugh, why aren't you cutting this dude today? You shouldn't be on the team. If you're true to your word, if there's a standard there, knowing there are 16 different allegations, why is he on your team?" So that's the situation. And we can go back to John Harbaugh's comments on Deshaun Watson. He was very clear. He said that the Ravens were proud. He was proud of the Ravens zero tolerance policy, and mentioned Ray Rice and that whole situation. That's what a lot of people mention when you talk about the quote unquote zero tolerance policy. But said that he had a lot of opinions regarding the Deshaun Watson situation, but wasn't at liberty to share them. But when this is coming out of your own head coach's mouth, and then there's all of this, well, okay, now they do have a zero tolerance policy. So then that sets a standard up for your organization. But then something happens here for Justin Tucker, and we haven't heard, what the conclusion of the investigation is for the NFL. But then you have Eric DeCosta refuting some of this stuff. And then obviously Sashi Brown comes out saying they're never going to have this policy. It creates confusion of were they just flaunting that around to just do it and say, oh, hey, look, we're this model organization that does this and has this policy. But then when something big pops up in their own organization, do they say, oh, well, actually, we never had that policy and people just kind of made that up and here we are. But it's literally come out of your head coach's mouth. So the Ravens, that's been the conversation around them. That's what is brewing on social media right now. Because, again, this is heavy stuff with Justin Tucker. And whatever the investigation finds, we will figure that out, I guess, over the course of however long it takes. But another note here that Sashi Brown made clear is that Justin Tucker will be able to practice as the investigation continues with offseason programming beginning next month. So if there is no conclusion of this, if the Ravens have made no decision on it or whatever the case may be, if this is still an ongoing investigation, Justin Tucker will be able to be around the team and will be able to practice and participate in the Ravens offseason programming. So that's another thing that, it's just going to be that, I guess. Now, Sashi Brown did say the Ravens have gotten updates from the NFL on the investigation. Jamison Hensley here providing a quote. "One of the great things about the fact that the NFL has taken this on is that it gives more independence to the team, and so we try to respect and stay in arm's length." That coming from Sashi Brown, obviously courtesy of Jamison Hensley. And from Jamison Hensley as well, Sashi Brown says, "I think we want to make sure that we have a great understanding of the facts, that we hear both sides of the situation, that we allow the investigation to properly be concluded and make decisions based on full information." So really, again, that has been, that was the stance of Baltimore. Say, you know what? We're letting the NFL do their thing. We're not going to get involved here. We're not going to complicate it. That is the stance and the message that is coming from the Baltimore Ravens on the situation. So there's obviously the component for Justin Tucker of, did he do it? Did he not do it? We don't know what the NFL has found, is finding. Obviously, the allegations that have come forward, they're things you have to take seriously. The Ravens have made that clear, and they're going to have to make a decision. But as Chris Canty said, for the Ravens, they have, or I guess had, I guess you have to use the word had now. They had this reputation of being this team that, yeah, you know what? The Ravens, they don't really involve themselves with that. And they distance themselves from anybody who has allegations like that. And yes, due process is a thing. And that is something that has to, in investigations, right? You're going to find the facts. You're going to figure it out. You gather all the information, both sides here, right? Both sides. You get the side of the accusers and you get the side of the accused. And that is obviously how you formulate an investigation, you formulate facts, and that is how you work things out when it comes to this. But it becomes a situation and bad for business. I guess it's just a lose-lose situation for the Ravens, but they are going to have to make a decision whenever this thing fully concludes, and whatever it's going to be, it is going to be a monumental one. And again, the investigation, whatever it turns up, will certainly, I guess, aid Baltimore in that, but they can also make their own decision, right? The investigation can do whatever the NFL's, and then maybe the Ravens choose to run their own, or maybe they choose to fully go off of what the NFL's is. It seems like, I don't want to speak for them or put words in their mouth because they haven't said what they are going to do after it concludes. But, whether they choose to do their own investigation or not, that's up to them. And Sashi Brown, in a quote here from Just Rebeck, said, "It wouldn't be fair to our players, wouldn't be fair to any citizens, really. Flies in the face of the basics of any modern justice system when it comes to zero tolerance policy." And again, that is referring to making decisions merely based on allegations before we have full understanding of the facts. That is Sashi Brown's quote on that. So again, we hadn't really heard a lot about this situation. I don't know when John Harbaugh and Derrick are speaking at the league meetings. It could be today. I don't think they've announced anything. So if it is, we'll react to it tomorrow or later. But for now, Sashi Brown, gives his stance and, seemingly the teams on what their next steps are, which is follow the NFL's lead and figure out what the NFL is finding in their investigation. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll wrap up what Sashi Brown had to say on other topics and get into some John Harbaugh extension aftermath. Stay tuned, plenty to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Hasn't been a great March Madness for me. It's honestly one of the worst March Madness brackets I've ever made, but with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win and get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this Monday edition of the show. Another week talking Ravens football. The draft's less than a month away. We're coming up on that. Baltimore has 11 picks. And speaking of that, just to round out the Justin Tucker conversation we had in the first part of the show, another part of this whole situation also is Justin Tucker's on-field play. I mean, regardless of what the investigation turns out for Justin Tucker, and I'm separating, the off-field stuff from the on-field stuff here, Tucker did not have a good start to the year last year. I mean, he obviously pulled it together after the bye week, and, it was good that he did for the Ravens' sake on the field. But, again, this is a guy that you can save money if you release him. It's a post-June 1 cut. You can save money if you released him and designate him as a post-June 1 guy. So for a team that is looking for cap space, and for a team that also, John Harbaugh, Eric DeCosta, the team has made it clear that they are going to be looking at kickers. And this is the first year, again, off-field stuff aside, where even if none of this off-field stuff happened for Tucker, it really felt like Baltimore was going to look at kickers and at least have Justin Tucker's first real competition since his rookie year with Billy Cundiff. I mean, that Justin Tucker has not been challenged for his position. I'm not saying that a rookie kicker, if they pick a guy in the 6th round, would come and beat him out if he stays on the team after the NFL investigation. But, I mean, it feels like this is the first year where it feels like it's probably 99% it would be him if he stays. But at the same time, is this the beginning of the end for Justin Tucker on the field? So there's that situation with him struggling. There's obviously the off-field stuff, just a lot to sort through with Justin Tucker. But let's sort through the rest of Sashi Brown's comments. One interesting thing that he had to say, just some other notes here according to Jeff Rebeck, the Ravens not raising ticket prices in 2025. Great news. I'm thrilled about this, and I know other fans are as well. It's just a really good thing for the Ravens to be able to keep ticket prices the way that they were. Obviously, ticket prices are inevitable, but I'm glad it's not happening this year. This one's big, though. The Ravens have expressed interest in hosting a future NFL draft and have been in discussions with the league. So I don't know how that would work, for being honest. I mean, hey, look, I would love it if Baltimore were to go and host the draft. I think it'd be really cool if they were able to pull that off. But I'm sure a lot of logistical things would have to be passed and be figured out before anything of that sort happened. But it's cool to kind of see the draft move all around. And you know what? I think Baltimore, if everything was right, would do a really good job hosting it. Now, I don't know where it would be held at. I don't know if you do it downtown, if you do it somewhere else. I don't know. But, there might be a place or two that could handle the weekend festivities that is the NFL draft. Sashi Brown also saying M&T Bank Stadium renovations are on track. The training facility also was having renovations. And Sashi Brown also not a fan of doing the road games 3 years in a row. He said that, quote, "We are honored and privileged to play the game. We hope that they spread the joy of playing all Christmas on the road to some of our brethren around the league." It was criminally unfair what the NFL did to Baltimore the past 2 seasons, having them go on the road on Christmas both days or both years. Obviously, San Francisco 2 years ago and then Houston last year. The Ravens should not play on Christmas for 3 straight years, right? Again, it's cool when it happens once, but to have it happen a second time, I get it. You have Lamar Jackson, most polarizing player in the league. I understand. But, Lamar Jackson is human too. These players, these coaches, executives, staff members, let them enjoy their holiday with their families, right? If I will go on an all-time Locked On Ravens rant, and you can clip this, you can bookmark that. I will go on an all-time Locked On Ravens rant if they schedule the Ravens to play on Christmas Day for the 3rd straight year in a row. Especially if it's on the road, it's getting crazy in here. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't think they're going to do it. But I said they were going to do it again last year, and look what happened. So, for Baltimore, you know what? They like playing on Christmas in terms of the results because they have absolutely decimated the 2 teams they played the past 2 years on Christmas. San Francisco was a fun game that essentially wrapped up Lamar's second MVP. And then the Houston game was really fun where that was just absolute domination as well. So I don't think it's going to happen 3 years in a row. Hopefully it does not. Sashi Brown also talked about John Harbaugh's 3-year extension. Said, quote, "He's helped us really establish the Ravens way. He's an unbelievable leader, good friend, sets the culture. He evolves himself, which has been phenomenal to watch. So really glad to get a deal done with him." So let's just, I guess, straight up from that, dive into the John Harbaugh extension aftermath. Well, quickly, he also deferred questions about Lamar Jackson's potential extension to Eric DeCosta. Said, quote, "We love Lamar. Love to see his evolution as a young man and as a football player and a team leader." But back to John Harbaugh. Harbaugh, 3-year extension with the Ravens. This is a deal that Ian Rappaport reported. We talked about these wild details on our bonus episode on Saturday. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to go check it out because we dive into more depth on it. But this is apparently going to surpass his brother Jim's contract in terms of average annual value, apparently, where Jim is making $16 million per season. So if John does surpass that, which Ian Rappaport is saying is going to be the case, it's going to line him up, at least based off last year's numbers. And I know you got to factor in the new head coach signees into this equation as well. But that would put him at least the 3rd highest paid head coach in the league before all of the new guys come in. It's a big deal. High praise for John Harbaugh. The deal speaks for itself. I think that, again, I talked about this on the bonus episode. There are a lot of reasons to love John Harbaugh, and there are a lot of reasons to get frustrated with John Harbaugh. It's both. I think he is a good coach. There are questions about if he is still the right man to lead this team. Something you cannot question is that his players love him and want to go to war for him. You can tell that. Might not be every single player that's ever come through Baltimore, especially because Harbaugh was not that type of coach early in his career. He had to transform himself into a player's coach. But, you can tell, the bond he and Lamar have and the other guys, John Harbaugh is a player's coach through and through. And so you look at what John Harbaugh has done over the, course of his career, And he has been a historic coach for Baltimore. He's been a guy that, won a playoff game in each of his first 5 seasons, won a Super Bowl during his 5th year. He has a .623 win percentage in the regular season and still above 500 in the postseason. But people will look at, and I ran the numbers and I know other people did too, John Harbaugh in his first 5 years in the playoffs, he was 9-4. 6.9 or 0.692 win percentage. He won a Super Bowl 2008 to 2012. Last 12 seasons, 2013 to 2024, he's 4-7, 0.367 with no Super Bowls. And obviously there's context to that, right? John Harbaugh, I'm not blaming him for the playoff loss to Buffalo this past season. I'm not. 2023 and 2019, I personally do. That's where the majority of the blame goes for me. The game plans were bad. They got bullied out of what they wanted to do. It was bad. I think for a lot of these teams, they'd be lining up out the door if John Harbaugh was let go by Baltimore. But that doesn't mean, again, the expectations don't change for me with this extension for John Harbaugh. This was expected, in my opinion. The Ravens don't like going in with the lame duck head coaches, which for those that don't know, mean a head coach in the last year of his contract with no extension to have that security. So Harbaugh was due for a raise. It makes sense to me. It doesn't mean that Steve Bisciotti can't move off of John Harbaugh after this season if it doesn't go according to plan, which, again, my threshold does not change. I think divisional round or less, John Harbaugh should probably be let go, and he can go pursue other opportunities or whatever. If they make AFC Championship game, Super Bowl, or win the Super Bowl, I think that he probably stays. And I think that is a fair threshold in the era of, yes, winning is really important, especially for Baltimore. You don't want to waste Lamar Jackson's prime. I think that John Harbaugh, again, a lot of good that he brings to the table, but his mistakes can also be very loud, especially in the biggest moments, which if that continues to happen, and it has continued to happen over the last handful of seasons, is a team that, the Ravens have had teams that should have been Super Bowl winners. That 2023 team was historic. 2024 was historic. And, they have 2 playoff wins to show for that and no Super Bowl appearances at all. So they're going to give Harbaugh a shot here. And again, it's the end of March. They weren't going to fire Harbaugh at the end of March. It was either going to be they let him play out the contract and, it goes the way it goes, or they extend him and have the security, but they still have the option to let him go after this season. Steve Bisciotti has eaten money before in terms of coaches, and, if it's not the right fit for the Ravens, it's not the right fit. Sometimes you have a good coach, but the time just runs out, and we will see what happens this year. But obviously, I'm rooting for him. I hope that he's the guy to lead Lamar to a Super Bowl. I'm not actively rooting against John Harbaugh. Again, I think he's a good coach, but he has to be able to overcome those flaws. Every coach has them. It's not just John Harbaugh, but big extension for both sides. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about my mock draft that I did yesterday. We'll dive into it. It's a little controversial. We'll also get into a couple of mock drafts from some of you. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still hanging out with you here on this Monday. Appreciate everybody for being here. Again, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. Tell a friend, tell a family member. We're here for them also on Locked On Ravens. Maybe they want daily Ravens coverage. Maybe they want the Ravens perspective on something. 5 days per week, we are here Monday through Friday, and plus, obviously, all of our bonus content we bring you as well, whether you're an everyday or a first-time listener, somewhere in the middle. Really appreciate all of the support going strong here since 2019. I've never missed a weekday episode. This is episode 1,476 consecutively on the weekdays. Let's dive into another mock draft Monday. Again, the draft less than a month away, and we're really going to hit the pedal here when it comes to some draft content, diving into some positions of need, players that could fit, ways the Ravens could maneuver up and down the draft board. So actually, I calculated. I'm just going to calculate it here one more time before I actually say something about it, because we do a couple of different mock drafts. This is a normal one, but we only have 3 more after today, 3 more mock draft Mondays left. So what we're going to do is next week we'll do a trade up scenario. Then 2 weeks from today, we'll do a trade back scenario. Then on the Monday of draft week, we'll just do our final mock draft Monday predictions. And then crazy, we will know who the next young talents in the Baltimore Ravens organization will be. But let's get into my controversial mock draft. wasn't received very well. But again, the reason that I do these is every week I want to talk about someone new or a position that is new. And so while this guy is not the guy I would take, it sparks interesting conversation. I took Matthew Golden, the Texas wide receiver, at 27. To me, he's an intriguing player, someone that ran a 4.29 40. The production, I mean, his breakout season last year was, below 1,000 yards. He had 58 catches for 987 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's a deep threat, but the Ravens don't need a receiver. And I think that honestly, this wouldn't be the best use of their asset. But I mean, Golden is a player that, Zay Flowers, Rashod Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, and Matthew Golden. I mean, that's a heck of a quartet there. And DeAndre Hopkins is, not a long-term piece. I think that Zay and Rashod should be, and you throw in Matthew Golden, who you'd have for at least 4 controllable years, if not 5 with the 5th-year option. There are ways that it does make sense, but I don't think it makes the most sense. I feel like taking a wide receiver, I mean, obviously this isn't a very deep receiver class. That it's not that like Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, Drake London, etc. Not that type of draft class. But I think that Golden still is a talented player. I think he'll probably go before the Ravens pick. And if he is on the board when the Ravens pick, I mean, do they go true BPA if he is, or do they use that resource on a defender? I mean, honestly, I think that they should use it on a defender, but it does spark a conversation of the Ravens have said, Eric DeCosta, they want to build a track team out there on offense, and Golden would certainly fit that mold. He's not the biggest receiver in the world or anything like that. He's, about 6 foot, 195 right around. But again, a talented player. I just think that it's an intriguing pick, just not the one that I personally would make. But again, that's why we do these, to have conversations about different players. It'd be boring if I just pick the same players every single week. So that's a conversation. But then, all right, how do you respond from that Matthew Golden pick? Kenneth Grant, Michigan defensive lineman at 59. This is an absolutely disgusting place for him to go. I mean, he's going to go probably in the first round, if I'm being honest. There's no shot he falls to Baltimore at 59. He could be their pick at 28, if I'm being honest. I see early second being the absolute latest Kenneth Grant goes. Obviously, everyone's talking about Mason Graham, his counterpart there at Michigan. I still think Kenneth Grant would be a really good pick for Baltimore. Even at 28, I think that he'd be a really solid option for them. He's one of the best defensive linemen in a very, very deep defensive line class. Baltimore does need interior guys. Michael Pierce retired, Brent Urban a free agent. You need another guy. I think with Nandu Madubuike and Travis Jones, I don't think Roger Washington is that guy right now. So you want to take a guy like Kenneth Grant. If you're Baltimore, I'm all on board for that. Then Jordan Birch, edge from Oregon, just sticking in the trenches with the pass rush for Baltimore. I think Jordan Birch is a really intriguing option. There are a lot of guys in like the late second to late third round that we're going to see go off the board. We've talked about a lot of them, even like mid-second rounders. I think Birch kind of falls into that category. Jackson Slater, Sacramento State offensive lineman at 128. Malachi Moore, Alabama safety at 136. Nice Peebles, the Virginia Tech defensive lineman at 176. Again, there are so many good defensive linemen in this class. Do the Ravens need to take 2 D linemen in this class? It depends. I think if they sign a vet, they should only take 1. If they don't, they should take 2. I think that guys like, again, Kenneth Grant, probably a first-round pick. I think that Peebles is a guy that probably should go in the second round, like late second, early third. And, teams can maybe get him in the 4th or 5th. That's how deep this class is. Then you have Teddy Buchanan, the California linebacker, Jalen Smith, the USC corner. You also have Q Robinson I took at 210, edge from Alabama. Jalen Conyers, the Texas Tech tight end at 212. And then Xavier Truss, Georgia offensive lineman at 243. Now, I will say, did I take Xavier Truss because his last name was Truss, Big Truss? No, I didn't take him because of that. But I think it's a nice little cool tidbit at the end there. And you know what? The Ravens, they have taken some Georgia Bulldogs or added some Georgia Bulldogs to their roster over the last handful of seasons. It was Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia. You're getting those schools. The Ravens love, when they find a school they like, and obviously Michigan with the Jim Harbaugh pipeline before, they stick to that. So, look, this is probably not the way this draft is going to go for Baltimore. I think they're probably going to draft a kicker. Maybe they draft a running back. I think they're going to take a corner earlier than I did, but it's always intriguing conversation. And I want to talk about different players, different guys that can fill in different needs. I think it's really exciting to do that. And so, again, Golden probably will not be their pick, but it's something that you can definitely look at and say, hey, let's talk about this and have a conversation. So that was my mock draft Sunday. Again, next week we'll get into a trade up scenario, and I already have a couple targets in mind, so I'm excited to do that one. Let's dive into a couple listener/watcher mock drafts before we get out of here for the day. First off, I want to start with one from Josh, who says both had Q, feels like a Raven pick. Josh Simmons, Ohio State offensive lineman at 27. Wyatt McLoom, the offensive guard from West Virginia at 59. Chris Paul Jr., linebacker from Ole Miss at 91. Savion Williams, TCU wide receiver at 129. Demetrius Knight, South Carolina linebacker at 136. Elijah Roberts, SMU defensive lineman at 176. Luke Lachey, tight end from Iowa at 183. Q Robinson, edge from Alabama at 203. Ice Waxter, the corner from Villanova at 210. Elijah Williams, edge from Morgan State at 212. And Ben Sauls, the kicker from Pittsburgh at 243. Josh Simmons, obviously, coming off the injury, would have gone higher, recovery and whatnot. But I like that pick a lot. Back-to-back offensive linemen. And then you have Chris Paul here. I think that for me, I maybe would replace Wyatt McLoom with, another edge guy if you can get one there, maybe a Landon Jackson. That's a guy that I like. But I don't hate the two offensive lineman approach. I just think that with Ronnie Stanley coming back, that's something that I would have saved for that scenario, assuming Ronnie was not coming back. Savion Williams is a guy. I know a lot of people are talking about Jack Beck, but I think that Savion is someone that does fit what Baltimore needs at that position, especially as like a sixth wide receiver. I think that could make a lot of sense. Luke Lachey also. I know Josh said Q feels like a Ravens pick, but I think Luke Lachey as a fourth tight end feels like a Ravens pick as well, especially, we have to remember all three of the Ravens tight ends on the roster currently, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler, all three of those guys are expiring contracts. Let's do one now from Don Izzo. He says this would be literally a dream draft. Mike Green, edge from Marshall at 27. Darian Porter, corner from Iowa State at 59. Tate Ratledge, Georgia, offensive lineman at 91. Lathan Ransom, safety from Ohio State at 129. Kyle Williams, wide receiver from Washington State at 136. Ismail Wandon Jr., the linebacker from Georgia at 176. Vernon Broughton, the defensive lineman from Texas at 183. And Chase Lunt, the offensive tackle from UConn at 203. Mike Green would be unbelievable at 27. And then, I love Darian Porter as well, but Tate Ratledge is one of my favorite offensive linemen in the entire class, especially I think at the value that a team could potentially get him at. I think Tate Ratledge is awesome, and I think he would fit and he could honestly compete for a starting spot right away in this Baltimore offense with the guard positions. And then again, you just kind of fill out the rest of the needs, defensive line, linebacker, wide receiver, like you're hitting all the needs here. So Don Izzo, I like this draft. And that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. On the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content from us. So be sure to stay tuned. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.